Are you serious? Are you serious? President Barack Obama has just signed an executive order, and he signed it yesterday on the facilitation of a presidential transition. Now, there's the process of transfer of power from one president to the other, to the next one, was established in an amended law in 1963 and has been followed ever since. There's no need for a new facilitation of a presidential transition. But Obama has just signed an executive order. And here's what, I'm going to read part of it. It's very lengthy, and I'll put the link below, and you can actually read it for yourself at the whitehouse.gov. But the facilitation, executive order, facilitation of presidential transition by the authority vested in me as president of the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including Section 7301 of Title V, United States Code, and the Presidential Transition Act of 1963, as amended, and to assist the presidential transition, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1, Policy. The peaceful transition of power has long been a hallmark of American democracy. It is the policy of the United States to undertake all reasonable efforts to ensure the presidential transitions are well coordinated and effective, without regard to party affiliation. Section 2, Establishment of the White House Transition Coordinating Council. A, to facilitate the presidential transition, including assisting and supporting the transition efforts of the transition teams of eligible candidates, there is established a White House Transition Coordinating Council. And so the White House Transitioning Coordinating Council shall be composed as following officials of their designees. And it goes on to list everybody involved in the transfer of power, like the assistant to the president and the chief of staff, the assistant to the president and the deputy chief of staff, the assistant to the president and the deputy chief of staff of implementation, counsel to the president, assistant to the president for presidential personal affairs, assistant to the president for national security, assistant to the president for homeland security and counterterrorism, the assistant to the president for economic policy and director of National Economic Council, the director of national intelligence, the director of the Office of Management and the Budget, the administrator of the general services. All of these people make up this transitional team. But he goes on in this executive order, he's naming who the team will comprise of. There's going to also be coordinated outside counsel and outside agencies, outside of the federal government, that will also be involved. So for the first time ever, the President of the United States is going to use one-off transitioning team. In other words, yes, a lot of the first assistants to national security and Department of Homeland Security and what have you are all going to be involved. But they're also going to bring in an outside team that's not part of the government to help transition the power. So it's one-off. And so that's pretty significant, folks, because if anything gets lost in the translation or in the transition, then the administration can always fall back and say, look, we did everything we're supposed to do. We brought in the outside guys. They're responsible for this transitional execution of the transition of documents and power. If something gets lost in transition, you can't hold us accountable because we use them. All right? So Obama's putting a cushion in between himself and the Trump administration. Let's say it is the Trump administration. So instead of just direct handover Obama's going to hand it over to a outside public transitional team who will then in turn regurgitate it and hand it to the Trump administration or the Clinton administration. And that, my friend, is different than it's ever been done in history. Why do it that way? Why put somebody in the middle who hasn't been working it every day to help hand it over? Why don't you just hand it over yourself directly to the team that the Trump administration would appoint or the Clinton administration? So I'm just leaving that out there for you. Why do an executive order? Transition of power. They're already starting to think about how they're going to do this and how they're going to, what's going to, my concern is what gets lost in translation and transition. And why would it get lost in transition? You do the math and you can leave the comments below. Again, I'm praying for America and take America back. And part of that is to give it back to the people, of the people, for the people, by the people. Are you serious? Are you saved? Give your life to Jesus Christ. He is coming soon.